What's up, everybody? My name's Indy, and the gentleman next to me is Jay Powell from Powell Group Consulting. And that was perfect timing because my dogs were just barking like mad. But then they just went out. So that's good. Anyways, welcome to Indie Game Business. And today we've got Jonathan Concepcion, and he's a developer of OneBit Adventure. So we're going to talk. The title of this is From Simple Game to Full-Time Indie Dev. That's the dream, right, Jonathan? We were just talking about that before. That is the dream.
Oh yeah.
Is it though? I mean,
Is it though?
if you love speaking a lot to a lot of different people, then it's the perfect
well,
dream.
You know, they do say the grass is always greener on the other side, right? But you know why? That's because that's where their septic tank is. But
that's good, Dan. This is like I never heard that one, but you're right. So,
anyways, welcome, enjoy.
So, Jonathan, let's start where we always love to start. Tell us how you got into the industry initially, and then walk us through your career up to this point.
Yeah. So when I first started, my dream was when I was little, played a lot of video games. Kingdom Hearts was like my favorite all-time game. Just wanted to get into RPG games. And as I grew older, I decided to go to college and try to pursue that dream. The unfortunate part was I went to ITT Tech, got a degree in game design and visual communications, but failed to land a job. And most of it was me being afraid to leave my state and basically pursue that dream without leaving my family. So I ended up doing basically volunteer work at a game company in Wisconsin. Didn't end up pursuing the full project. We failed to release a project. Went back to working the 9-to-5 job at Woodman's Food Market, doing retail warehouse work until I strained my back. And for the most part, I thought to myself, this was 7 years after I got done with my degree. Maybe I should try to go for it, you know. And had I not hurt my back, I probably would have stood away from my dream. And with the dream set in mind, with my back hurting, I was like, you know what? Talk to my wife. What if I try to make a game and try to release it within 6 months? Can you work full time and I'll work part time? At the time, it was the other way around. I was working full time, she was working part time, so we switched. And I think for the most part, that was like the biggest and greatest moment of my life, because that was the start of OneBit Adventure. Trying to make a simple game, not an overcomplicated, not an MMORPG. I tried making a MOBA. I failed the first time I tried to make a prototype, and just flat out said, you know what? Let's make it simple. I love pixel art and just wanted to make a simple RPG game, and OneBit Adventure was born. I don't know if I should get into like the whole reasoning and how I started with the idea of OneBit. Most notably, Pixel Dungeon was my inspiration for it. It was like, well, I enjoyed Pixel Dungeon, but some of the things was it was really hard for me to get into. I'm not a hardcore roguelike. So I tried to think, well, let me make a casual roguelike. And then I saw Pixel Dungeon and I was like, well, they don't have an endless scroller, and I'm looking for like something that's very unique but also innovative in a way. And so I decided, well, let's try to do that and make a pixel RPG game where it's an endless scroller. You go up as far as you can. It gets to the point where it's really hard. Enemies just outpower you. Well, end your adventure, go back to 0 steps, and you'll come back stronger than ever. And so OneBit Adventure was born right there. So.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, let's start there. I mean, where did you? I mean, you said you didn't know if you wanted to dive into the backstory of where it came from, but yes, I mean, absolutely. So, I mean, of all the things that you could do out there, how did you and why did you go that, other than just like Pixel Dungeon being a fan?
Yeah. I think for the most part at the time, I've worked on different mini projects. Some of them range to like DDR style, 2D side scroller shooter. And I think what stuck out to me the most was it might just be my history of video games, because the Diablo franchise was something I enjoyed playing, even though I only started on 3. It was one of the things was like, well, a lot of different elements, different character designs and ideas came from that. And I don't know, I really wanted to make something that was different. And the first part of it was looking at the mobile market, and for as saturated as it was, my whole premise was, well, starting off as a game and trying to tell someone, "Hey, check out my game." I didn't do too well in marketing, and so making a game that was free to play was initially my biggest way to say, "Hey, check out the game. It's free. Give it a try." Um, and so yeah, that was the main two things. Um, but yeah, in terms I see, that was the hard part. When it came to the idea behind OneBit and what inspired me, I think it was just combination of wanting to make RPG, wanting to make it simple, wanting to make it, um, a game that I can complete. And it like, literally the first version that I released was you're able to move, you're able to attack enemies, and that's it. Like, it was an endless scroller. The maps were handmade, but they randomly placed. Um, and yeah, it really spawned from there and just went crazy with features over time.
So obviously, when you're trying to make the move to full time development, you need to be making money too. So, what was the business model behind One Bit Adventure?
So the whole business model was to bring it into what Fortnite did, which was sell skins. But they also sell battle passes, and being so early, I did not know how to implement like such a like a special live event feature. So I avoided doing stuff like that, and it was only skins and revives. And throughout most of the mobile market, revives were kind of like the basic step to making money. Was well, have a currency and use that currency in the game. And then also allowing free players to get that currency by watching ads. So you would go to the shop, you would watch 5 ads, and that would be your way of basically getting diamonds. But also, if you wanted to skip the ads, you just pay $5, you would unlock it. And that was essentially my go-to. I don't think I went so crazy with trying to make money at first because I wanted to build a community, and it literally was about, let's make a currency and let's make it valuable but not pay to win, because that was my whole debacle. Was like, if I make pay to win, I could make money now, but it wouldn't be in favor for me to build a community around that. I didn't want that whole idea of I don't know. That was just one I guess that's a moral decision, was let's make a game that's not pay to win, but also something that a lot of players can give feedback and just go in. If they want to support the game, they can spend diamonds, they'll buy skins. Also, they'll buy theme colors. So you could get a theme that would change the entire game from purple and white to Game Boy style, or it would change it to pink and red. There was just little things like that, that was part of spending diamonds.
So I mean, you mentioned the community part, and yes, you're right. It's there. There's two sides of that coin. It's like, do you want to make money immediately, or do you want to actually have a group that's going to be behind you? And you've had it down. The game's been downloaded like over 1 million times
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, so on Google Play, it says over 1 million, but right now we're totaling close to 3.4 million downloads across Google Play, App Store, and Steam.
So, what this being your first foray, so what were some of the challenges? Because you basically jumped in with 2 feet, and not only jumped in, you jumped into like one of the areas where we constantly tell indie devs, don't do a free to play mobile game. You did it and it worked. So what were some of the things that worked in your favor that you learned along the way?
I think the biggest part was finding a way to have your game be searchable without having to make it hard for a normal player to discover. The whole idea was, it started off with the title OneBit, because when you think of OneBit, you think of pixel art, and then adventure. Well, this is going to be a game that's a pixel art adventure game. And that created its own search engine optimization. And how do I describe it? Because it really was the whole idea. I didn't even think about, because I knew that the mobile market was saturated. I knew like often developers would say go to Kickstarter or try to get a fan base and try to release a premium game versus going free to play. I also knew a lot of content needed to be made for free to play to be successful, but I think the whole idea was, if I'm going to make a game I'm passionate for and I can have a community that backs me up, then I could see through it. And I believe when I first started releasing it, it was started on Google Play. And then a few months later, I released it to the App Store, and I got featured as App of the Day by Apple. And that's not something I reached out to them. They actually published it without me knowing, and just like, oh, App of the Day, OneBit Adventure. So I did get a huge boost from them seeing the game for the first time and recognizing that it was different from the market. When you look at the market, it's very easy to get confused, especially with the app icons. And since my whole idea was make it simple, I created I didn't create it. My friend created most of the artwork for the game, and the warrior icon was just very symbolic in terms of when you look at a list of games and you just look at the thumbnails, it pops out the colors. There's contrast. It just fits perfectly in terms of trying to see it from the sea of games. So definitely the icon goes a long way, making solid screenshots that portrays the game in every way possible. But yeah, the whole idea of free to play, I would say it is one of the things I saw a lot of more bigger companies going off and making free to play games. And even to this day, I see certain games come out as premium but fail because they try to release a premium game with a free to play genre. And so I looked at the idea of me trying to go full time, and I saw, well, my marketing skills aren't that great. I'm just gonna try a free to play and let free to play be my marketing, so to speak.
So it's one of those, from oh gosh, what was it? Dodgeball. Like, bold move, Cotton. But it did work out for you. So I mean, that is fantastic. So you mentioned that you were weak in the marketing side. And marketing, or at least user acquisition, the ugly stepchild of marketing, is so important on a free-to-play game. So what did you try? What didn't work? And where did you end up on your marketing journey?
Yeah. So, well, first step was always to look for people to review the game. And I've emailed a bunch of different websites, a bunch of different people of interest that would review a mobile game. It really was hard because most of them are looking for console games or PC games, and just a few, like Android Central covered OneBit Adventure, and that gave me a huge spike. Simply put, I try to make the email look as professional as possible, include links to the trailer as well as promotional pictures in the email, and it was literally just emailing 100 different websites and trying to get that word out. The unfortunate part was, like, when I wanted to release the game, I also knew that it was very bare bones in terms of features. It was lacking a lot of different features, and I was just hoping for that inch of, oh, let's see how this game does a few years from now, or wow, we're getting in early on a design that could be something. And that was one that I've tried over and over. I have tried a Kickstarter for OneBit Adventure, and this was before it released, and that failed horribly because I did not email anyone. I just posted on Kickstarter and said, oh, look, this is OneBit Adventure. Here's my goal. Here's my vision. and just hoped for the algorithm to feed me new players, and that did not work at all. I don't even think I raised $100, but it was it was not a good thing for me to like go into a system and expect it to work. Like there was a lot of things that now that I know was, oh, you need to gather a fan base, you need to get emails that so that when people gather together, they'll know that your game is coming to Kickstarter. They'll know that they'll pledge right away instead of just posting it out there and expecting it to work. Um, for the most part, social media, I'm more into just programming my game versus doing social media. And while I post here and there, I did found more interest in posting. For as much as I hated trying to push it out there, it does work. It was just one of those things. It's just like I couldn't find the right words. I couldn't get it to go viral. And I think my expectation of going viral was what held me back and kind of pushed me away from posting because it wasn't going viral, but there were a handful of people really engaged with my posts and liking it and talking about, oh, I'm looking forward to the next update. And yeah.
Look, with Kickstarter, it's not that you failed horribly. It's that you had a wonderful learning experience.
Yes.
That's the way that we spin that, because it is. I mean, now you absolutely know how to attack it the next time around.
Mm-hmm.
When you're building that community, so how are you actually capturing that information? I mean, are people signing up for a newsletter? Is it a Discord, or how are you gathering your community?
So my community is all on Discord. Like, I think personally for me being a gamer, if you haven't heard of Discord or used Discord, that's kind of like the go-to spot to gather people and to share a common interest. So I created a Discord and I knew 100% even before releasing that it would be important. So when I had released the game, I also had a Discord link in the game. So on the main menu, on the right sidebar, you'll see like a Discord button, and that would lead you to the OneBit Adventure Discord. Well, I call it the Galactic Slice Discord, but I promote OneBit Adventure for now. And so that's formally how I gathered it together. And so far, that's how I gauge what my community is. I have tried to do Facebook in terms of having a group there, and it did work, but I think spreading my wings too much, trying to put my eggs in a whole bunch of different baskets, it led me to being a little overwhelmed. So Discord has been my main basket to focus on and gather people. So anytime someone on Reddit like ends up talking about the game, I'm like, oh, join our Discord. You know, that's where we're talking about different classes, the next updates, and so forth. But yeah, the whole idea is basically getting players that love the game to go into Discord and talk more about the game. So even the global newsletter, which is in the game, it's a simple idea. Is anytime I'm about to release a new update, I have a button that says check out this new update, and then it'll link it to my website, and my website has the link to my Discord. Well, the OneBit Adventure Discord. So in reality, there is a lot of things that goes into managing a community. And fortunately, throughout the time, I've had different players that come into the game and help moderate or help give suggestions and build different things for the game, pretty much.
So did you try anything other than Facebook and Discord and Reddit? Are there other social media outlets that you've worked on as well?
I think I have tried Instagram. I haven't tried TikTok, even though I know other developers have succeeded. I believe Flipfly, Aaron, he basically used TikTok to promote different things or different small prototypes, and he gets a whole bunch of viewership, and he can link it back to his company as well as his games. But in terms of me trying it, I think that's where the lacking of marketing was. A little too afraid to push the boundaries, or I would think, oh, I need to spend more time working on my game, versus building up an Instagram account. But every now and then I'll post a link or a picture of what I'm doing, whether I'm at Midwest Gaming Classic or if I'm releasing a new soundtrack. Yeah, and I believe those are the only ones: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, um, Reddit, and there's probably one other, but it's very limited in terms of spreading my wings on that.
So you brought up a good point when you said, maybe I need to spend more time making my game. How do you balance it? How much time do you spend on marketing every week versus, basically making the games or any other business stuff that goes along with it?
Yeah, if you would ask me 5 years ago, I probably would have said just focusing on the game was 100% the whole idea. While at the time, I was fortunate with the whole app of the day coming in, but also it wasn't like I released the game and it happened. That actually happened like 5 months after the game was out on the market. Um, but yeah, in terms of managing it, now I've set schedules. So the morning starts off with looking at my emails, checking the support tickets, and then going in to checking how Discord's doing. Um, and in terms of trying to figure out the next post, it's really all about events. And I've marked those events on my calendar, and then I'm like, okay, I'll tackle sending a post more towards the weekend and then schedule it, because I didn't want to deal with it during the weekdays when I'm trying to program. So in a way, it's like really trying to prepare for the future. I I've done days where I'm just like, all right, let's set this Friday to just plan out different strategies in terms of what to post, where to post, and um sort of road mapping. So but it is like I said, in the past, if you would have asked me, I would have said focus on the game and let the marketing be the players, because if it is something that is great, players will talk about it, they'll share it with their friends. But it really was hard because being a single player game versus a multiplayer game, that just opens up a different ballpark of spreading the word. So yeah, that's all I can say about that right now.
No, I mean, before we grew, I did the very same thing. I would sit down on Saturday or Sunday watching TV or whatever and do all of our social media for the week, because it does. When it's not your main focus, it's such a derailment to go from what you're normally doing to doing it. So yeah, but trust me, I completely get it. Obviously, when you're doing these things on your own. Now, did you do it 100% on your own, or did you have contractors that you use for different things?
Yeah, so I would say 90%. I mean, well, I can't say 90% because so much of it is at starting off, it was me doing all the programming and sound effects. I did all the sound effects. And then the two main things that I needed help was pixel art and music. So in terms of those two, I actually reached out to people on Twitter for the music, and that's how I was able to find different music artists that was into pixel art but also making chiptune music. And then my friend, he was actually a longtime friend of mine's when we used to play Robocraft. And I think a part of that helped me get a jump start into the vision I had for the game. At first, I was using free assets during like the prototype phase. And he saw it on Twitter when I was posting the game that I was working on. He saw it on Twitter and was like, well, you need a pixel artist? Because I can help you like make a special tile set for it. And and then I did pay him for the initial tile set, and then moving forward we worked together, I want to say for about a year before he ended up having things he had to do, and then from then was trying to find another pixel artist. So really it was uh finding freelancers that was having a spare time and wanting to work on the game. But yeah, pixel art and music was something I knew I was not good at. I knew like how to use FL Studio. I knew how to make the beats for different music, but at the end of the day, it was my spare check to try to, well, I can have some money set aside to try to get someone to do this for me. And even if it was fairly bad, I would still put it in, because I was like, that's more or less it, as long as it flows with the vision. I'm gonna try to do this and get it in the game. Um, and that was before I had the community support that I do now. And it's gotten to the point where the community makes dungeons for the game that they want to see. Um, and it really boiled down to doing the most programming, because that was my strongest point. And so in terms of, I think the one biggest thing was animation. And I still get questions about that today. It was like, well, why isn't there attack animations? Why don't bosses have attack animations? And the initial idea was, I'm a programmer. I'm not trying to cut corners, but to try to fit my vision of the game was to have everything be more static, in terms of limiting the amount of work that I needed to do in the art side of things. And that's essentially what ended up working for me.
Animations take frames, and frames cost money, and we only have so much money to spend on this.
Yes.
But yeah, it does give you that old school feel when they just like bump into each other too. You know, it's like that's a good one. So where I was leading with that is, this can get hard and like mentally hard. So when you're in the midst of this, so how long did it take you to make the game?
So it's been over, well, making the game, it's been over 5.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how did you deal with like burnout and stress and the whole, am I wasting my time in doing this part of the world?
Yeah. And I would say for a fact, the burnouts happened very frequently. So starting off was, I had this passion to try to make the game come to life. And what kept me motivated in the beginning was seeing 10 players a day playing the game. Because when I had released it, it only had about 100 downloads, but that's a lot compared to some of the other games I've seen. And I would see like 10 players playing. I was like, oh man, this is, people are actually playing it, and like daily. So that pushed me forward to trying to see this through. And when I got to the point of adding different skills or adding equipments, and I would release a major update, and then all of a sudden there was a bug and it crashed the whole game, and I stressed out. This was still when I was working part-time, before I had to go to work. Literally before I had to go to work, the release that I had, it crashed the game, and then I had to wait till the whole day before I coming home and actually fixing the bug and releasing an update. That was the most stressful part, because at the time I was still working, and I didn't know if I would retain that fan base or retain the players coming in. But I pushed forward for seeing what the future players would come back, especially when something does go wrong. Burnout was, and I think I've conquered most of my burnout through what is intensify gaming or intensify hobby, which I essentially drop everything I do for the game and spend the next few days not even thinking about the game. And I think my fan base knows, because they'll see me not on Discord and they'll know, oh, okay, he's taking a break. But it really boiled down to taking a step away. Because there were times where I hated my game. There were times where it's just like, I do not want to code. And I would tell my wife, it's like, I really don't want to do it. It's like, this is something that you're trying to work for. And, you see the dream, you see the vision, you start seeing more players play the game. And you would think that like, that's essentially what you need, right? You need 100 players, you need 1,000 players. But even when I did reach that point, it wasn't enough motivation. And I think personally, it was the times where I would spend 8 hours straight staring at the game. I found the best strategy was to mute my game, because muting my game meant that I would not hear anything about the game, and it kept it more fresh. Um, but yes, it was essentially, yeah. And I think when I came back to it, looking at different tutorials, different games, playing different games, really trying to set my mind off the game, and then coming back to the game with a refreshed mind set. So yeah, I would say it is tough to like stay on track with something that you want to succeed, while at the same time you see the success and then all of a sudden you just don't want to look at it. It really is hard. And a part of the community does help, and a part of it does stress me out. Like, they see a lot of different things they want it to see in the game, and it's like, I want this now. I want to see more classes, I want to see more skills, and then I'm like, take a step back. I don't need to add it. It's really on my own accord, as being the developer of the game. But yes, for sure, taking a step back has helped with handling burnouts.
So how do you, when you get this feedback coming from the community, how do you decide, okay, that's something that actually sounds like a good idea versus, I'm sorry, you want that? There's no way in hell I'm ever putting it in the game.
Multiplayer, add multiplayer. Why not? Like,
oh, that's easy
says.
too. I mean, I don't know why you haven't done it already, honestly. But
well, guess what? The people that are from the community, you'll get to see OneBit multiplayer, because I actually worked on making a video specifically on the challenges of multiplayer. So that's going to be something I'm uploading to YouTube. But for sure, that in the beginning, it was a feedback system that I had so that the community would be engaged. And this was on Discord. I had a friend of mine that created a bot system so that you can post your suggestion, and it would have I believe a check mark or an X mark, and whatever had the most votes was more likely to get into the game. And for the most part, they kept it simple, and I made it very clear that OneBit shouldn't have multiplayer, and the community did accept it. So anytime a new user comes in, they post a meme of this iceberg of multiplayer at the top, and then you see API calls, hackers, and different problems with multiplayers. But it really is boiling down to being upfront and blunt about what the scope of the game is, and limiting the ideas and suggestions. And that goes a long way. It's, like, you don't want to repeat yourself to new players. You want to keep the old players happy and engaged, and also have them be the ones to be like, oh, well, this is why the developer doesn't want to make multiplayer, because so and so. So it kind of helps alleviate some of the stress that I go through. But it really does help when I see a small suggestion that I never heard or thought of doing. One of the most recent ones was adding a simple plus or minus to the equipments that were greater than or weaker than your current equipment. And one that I never thought of, and I saw it as a suggestion, and then I was like, you know what, I'll see about adding it. And then when I added it, that's when more suggestions started coming in. So it really is picking the right ones that fit the vision of my game that I never thought of, and adding it to the game, and then seeing the realization of, well, let me accept a chance at something that could benefit the game. But yeah, for the most part, I know at the end of the day, not all suggestions that come to Discord or people that have like initial ideas comes to life. It's just boils down to the fact that I'm one developer trying to make a game, and if it's a simple quality of life feature, I would definitely try to do it. But if it's overcomplicated, I am gonna set it to the side. It's gonna be in the list of different ideas, but it's not something that I'm going to pursue right away.
So I mean, there's a balance that has to come in with that. When you're
Mhm.
talking about saying, okay, look, this suggestion is not within the scope of the game, but then again, you're basically building a live service light type
Mm.
game where you said
Mhm.
yourself, you have to have constant ongoing content to
Mhm.
keep the players active.
Mhm.
Where do you balance that? At what point is it something I thought about doing? At what point is it feature creep? What point of it is, okay, we have to have something out there to go on and keep people engaged?
I think for the most part, and seeing that in the beginning of the game, none of the features that are in the game today was like ever going to be decided. Um, like for an example, starting the game off, max level was level 50. Then within time, and this was one of my worst, I would say my worst feature creep was increasing level 50 to 100 because the values were exponential. And fortunately enough, reaching level 100 does not break the integer limit. So I got away with reaching level 100 without the game end up being a buggy mess that people could reach. Um, yes, that is a good question. How do you determine when a suggestion becomes feature creep? And in all honesty, I think as an indie developer and being the main guy to decide what goes in the game, what goes out the game, it really it really is hard. Like there is so many different games out there that I try to compare and contrast. Like, would it feel good in one bit, or is it something that I should not do? And what is the replayability? Because the most part is being free to play. You want the players to spend the most time playing the game because you need a form of connection with them. And if you could bring certain features from different games that people enjoy, why not add it? I think one of the simple being a prestige system, which I thought of Call of Duty. I thought of the time back in the days, like playing Call of Duty, like as soon as I reached max level, I was like, yes, I got all my weapons, I got everything. And then I was like, wait, I could prestige and do this same feeling again, like getting the weapons, unlocking everything. That experience felt good. And so when I saw one bit, I was like, well, what if we end up trying this? Like this was going to be game breaking in terms of replayability. Now, instead of reaching the max level one time, you can reach it 5 times, but we give you a bonus. So it's like, it's trying to give that end goal extended. Most players, and this was one of the things, was most players have seen different features in the game that ends up being extended because of how I added it. So I promised myself that if I were to add a dungeon, there has to be a unique feature, it has to be a unique system, but nothing that overpowers the premise of the game. As long as it's not too crazy, then I try to limit it down. And yeah, for the most part, it has worked. And I think when it comes down to the whole system of a feature, as long as that feature doesn't take over the main mechanics or the main part or the main end goal, then I consider it being a good feature. But yeah, at the end of the day, I do have a vision for the end of one bit. It's just more or less trying to keep the momentum going until I can move on to the next game.
So, well, let's chat a bit about that because there is a next game and it does have multiplayer,
Yes.
but it's in early development. So now you've got, I mean, one, you are full blown. I'm assuming you're full time. Are you still working a part time job either?
Right now, full-time indie developer. My wife doesn't work. She actually quit last year. I quit about, oh, now I'm trying to remember. It's like 2.5 years ago that I quit. So I spent 2.5 years working on a game, then took a leap of faith. My wife was still working full time, and then it went from there. So
So you're working on Dungeon of Greed as well. How do
so
you balance because we already talked about how do you balance the marketing for the first game? Now you've got the marketing and all the business type stuff that you need to do, plus updates and responses on OneBit, and now a new game coming in there as well. How do you separate? How do you balance all that?
So I think, and this is gonna come to a surprise for my community, is because Dungeon Greed, this is not the first iteration. They know it. This is actually probably the second time I've deleted the game and wanted to start over. It boiled down to my experience and ideas, and the way that I sought balance to trying to move on to the next game was to create tools to keep the first game alive. And by alive, I mean stuff going into the game. And for the most part, there's things that have been implemented to have players still be engaged. Monthly skins was something of an idea that, well, let's bring the community together. They want to see this art come into the game. Let's bring it in every month. And I'm able to pre-plan, and I'll program these set of sprites for December, these set of sprites for January. And then I'll give a shout out and let them know, hey, we're adding your game this month. Here's some diamonds, and want to let you know that thank you for providing this to the community. Special events was another. It really boils down to gathering a bunch of assets, a bunch of artwork, and setting it in a way that you can implement it in the game, sort of like scheduling it. And then and then having the spare time to work on Dungeon Greed. But as of now, it has been quite a journey just trying to figure out a multiplayer version of OneBit. And I think the whole idea is, I want to say, the balance is determining when it's ready to leave. And I think what proved that it was ready was this year, the beginning of, like, I want to say May of this year, I actually ate a piece of plastic that ended up going through my digestive system and put me on bed rest for about 5 months. I was on bed rest. And so essentially that was my proving point of OneBit Adventure, surviving the summer without any major updates. And if the game can thrive without major updates, that just proves that the game is ready for the next step, which is Dungeon Greed multiplayer. It was just more or less, I guess the idea of the game still, I want to say the game actually like I apologize. My dog is it's trying to pull me away right now.
We have them here too. We completely understand.
Yeah, he's I think he's begging me to take him outside. But the whole idea is pre-planning, trying to measure out different updates that aren't major and set it for OneBit, and then setting the days. So what I'm planning ahead right now is to go 4 days working on Dungeon Greed, go 1 day, maybe 2 sometimes, working on OneBit and pre-planning not new features, but foundational features that are already set in the game that can be added, and going from there, really.
Pebs wants to know if we can see the doggo.
Oh, yeah. Where you got? Oh, he's running away from me. I think he's gonna start barking.
I'm not going to talk to you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, do you think we can take a minute? I'm gonna just take the dog outside, and he's just
Yeah. Go ahead. We can pause.
Okay. All right, I'm sorry for that.
Y'all listen to me. What questions for me in the meantime? What are you gonna do? Hey, Dan.
Well, I think that's incredible that he's like, oh, we put the game on hold and it still was successful. That's amazing.
That is honestly, that's a very good test. Even though I don't recommend the whole needing to be on bed rest for 5 months.
No,
that's not. Oh, Dan, you're muted in Discord.
No, geez, that's because this is not for Discord. Is why.
I mean, the reason I was curious
was not for Discord is why. It's like that's what you get when you get to come and watch stuff on Twitch. You get you get me not muted.
we play a lot of Stardew Valley in this house, and so it's the same thing that you see with that game, and his next game coming out, and how he said recently is like, I don't want to see Stardew fizzle and die, so he keeps doing updates on it along the way as well. So yeah, I'm always very curious as to how all that stuff gets balanced, because I know balance is a very big thing.
Yeah.
So,
Hamster Hammer, what's up? Good to see you.
So
Good
I mean,
to
what did
always see you.
you played the game? What did you like?
I mean, it's fun. It's straightforward. It's not hard. It's I don't know. Is it turn based? You move, they move, right? Everything moves at the same time. So
it's you plan your move and then it all executes at the same time.
yeah, and doop doop doop. But you can move fast, and it's fun. I get frustrated because there's doors that are locked and I don't have a key. But you can get keys. And then what happens is once you get high enough, like it scrolls down and you can't go backwards. So you got to make sure and not get everything you need from below. Release your 3-month game on itch.io. Well, I would be interesting to check it out.
Congrats on that, Hamster Hammer.
Yeah, congrats. Yeah, pop it in chat. I think it'll be fine. Still riding. Okay, I'm out of here.
Question that came in, in terms of making your development life easier, have you thought about using AI assets, and do you think your community would rage if you did use AI assets?
Ooh, that is a good question. And by the way, here's the doggo right here. He's a Yorkie mix. He is actually considered a senior citizen when I brought him to the doggy hotel, because he's like close to 9 years old. But yeah, he's doing really well. Yeah, he loves belly rubs, but he's pretty grumpy at times. But yeah, AI is a huge I would say fine line between using it and actually utilizing the whole premise of AI. For now, pixel art is something that AI cannot compete with. I think naturally creating something that is handmade with pixel art is by far superior. And I only know this because my community actually used AI to try to generate sprites, and none of it would match, even though they fed different 1-bit sprites to it and said, look, create a warrior, and all of a sudden you got this sprite that just does not look anything like it. It was fun to see. I was curious because I knew how to do prompts, but I never actually did it with 1-bit. I just felt like it wasn't so I did try to create a prompt with, I believe it was called Wonder. But I tried to create a prompt for a landscape because I was trying to think, what if I put a 1-bit landscape promo art? And it was just not compelling, to say the least. It just could not. So for now, I just don't think it's worth it. In a pixel art game, it just is not worth the time to implement it as a game asset.
So what are you taking from what you learned in 1-bit and bringing to Dungeon of Greed?
In terms of bringing 1-bit into Dungeon of Greed, like what I'm taking, I think, and this might be something that is very common for AAA games when they work on a sequel. Even though the name is different, it is a sequel to 1-bit. So a lot of the mechanics are going to be refined to be more simple in function, because my code is spaghetti. But I've learned so much. I've learned about using certain built-in code that just made my life easier. And I'm able to try out new features that I wouldn't be able to do with 1-bit. Especially how I manage the enemies in 1-bit, and taking it to Dungeon of Greed, I can very much make things faster in terms of when I have to implement the new character class in 1-bit. I finally can okay, let's cut this. Let's put this all in one spot, so then I don't have to go through 10 different scripts just to manage like the stats, the base level, and the skill sets. So really, it's taking my knowledge and experience, bringing some of the code into Dungeon Agreed, and optimizing it for future proofing it.
So one of the questions that I know I have, and I understand this decision, but it still has to be a hard one. You mentioned that you have completely deleted, was it Dungeon Agreed a couple of times?
Yes. Two
That
times.
has to be traumatizing. I mean,
Yeah.
people would say, I'm going to go back in and revamp certain parts, but talk about where you get to the point where you're just like, F this, I'm done. We're deleting it, starting over.
Yeah. So, and this was in part, so for one part of it was I started the Dungeon Agreed project with making a modular sprite system where you can have the head swap to a different sprite, you can have the arm swap to a different sprite, the legs, the chest, the sword, and just saying that sounds like a nightmare to handle, especially when you have animation, which is what Dungeon Agreed will have. They'll have attack animations, they'll have skilled animation. My first iteration was that, a modular base system that turned out to be more headache than it was worth. And so, as heartening as it was, like, I was still at an early prototype phase, so deleting it was very easy for me to do. But at the same time, I was still managing OneBit Adventure, and I felt like the fan base saw videos of the first iteration, and I made like I think 5 different videos about it, and just wanting to start over was just one of the things that was just like, maybe I'm in over my head. And so I didn't want to be like that. I was already stressed out making a prototype that I knew that if I continue this, I'm just going to stress myself even more. And so that's when I went on to making the second iteration, which was a more updated tile set. I had my friend be the pixel artist, come back and recreate the vision. And for the most part, this one was and still is the current art asset that I'm looking at. The only problem was when I started doing the procedural generation and how I wanted the dungeons to look, it it became hard to look at my old code. So one of the things was, can I go back to this code a month from now and know where how to modify this specific room type? And I told myself I could not. Like, if I wanted to add a chest into this specific chunk, even though I have a JSON file that can literally like load and do it, I could not find it in code. And for the most part, I felt if I want my game to be, if I want my game to succeed, it was the next step of trying to make a complex game. I would have to read it and I would have to understand it. And if I don't understand my own code, then it's not going to finish. And for the most part, OneBit, still to this day, I'm able to read my own code simply because I think it's me growing into living in the code that automatically when I see a bug occur, I know exactly what script pops in my head. And so that was my second deletion, was understanding that what if I take a lot of the naming convention that I use for OneBit and bringing it to Dungeon Agreed. So instead of trying to create a new naming system, bring back the OneBit naming system, put it in Dungeon Agreed, and refine it. So doing what was comfortable for me and making it so that I wouldn't have to learn new things when switching between both games. So
I can just see that moment. It's like, I can't read this shit. Delete. We'll try it again later. Hey, how has, we'll do one more question and then we'll let you go. How has the production scope, budget, that sort of stuff changed between OneBit to now Dungeon Agreed?
Yeah, I think it for the most part, and this was one of the other decisions that I had was making the sequel be a premium game versus free to play, so that I would actually limit myself to what features I would have in the game. And in terms of, I don't know, I don't know if we're thinking of financial budget or just what I'm expecting at the end.
Both. I mean, it's all part of running a business.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the one thing that is different from OneBit and Dungeon Agreed, was having a set number and aiming towards that milestone, which was different because OneBit, I started off with 0 dungeons and I worked my way up to adding up to 5 or 6 dungeons, going on a 7th. And for Dungeon Agreed, I felt like if it's going to be premium, it has to be baked in. So if I have 5 different theme maps, I'm going to keep it at 5 different theme maps. Financially, I know what I'm getting into because I've already spent a certain amount of money on OneBit Adventure, and it definitely was cheap in the beginning, but over time grew, and the amount of money I've spent has pretty much, I would never have thought I would have to spend so much money, but I wanted to reinvest what OneBit Adventure had, and now it's a part of saving that money and bringing it to Dungeon Agreed. Yeah, I think that's hard. It really is hard to answer that, like the scope of the project.
But at least you have
yeah.
a scope. I mean, in your head, you know where it's going to fit. I mean, are you going to do, so, it's going to be premium. Are you going to do the same platforms, or are you aiming for more PC console, or what's your target?
Yeah, I am aiming for consoles. I want, I got rejected off of Nintendo Switch for OneBit Adventure, and that put me down a bit because I was just like, man, if I want to try to reach a different audience or a different group of people, premium would be the ideal way. And so I'm thinking of ways to get a new fan base into the OneBit Adventure mechanics. And so it was just essential for me to focus on controller inputs so that when I work on Dungeon Agreed from the ground up, it will work with a controller while also managing touchscreen inputs. And so really trying to boil down what is needed to make it work, and going from there. But yeah, for sure, I want to aim for consoles. I want to say the consoles, but I don't want to say like exactly why I'm choosing. And then also going on Steam, and then building a wish list for Steam, as well as going on itch, and just trying to reach different platforms that a premium game can reach. So
well, we greatly appreciate you taking time out of your day to come and share this, and congratulations. I mean, it's not an easy thing to sit down and say, okay, I'm going to make this, and then rearrange your whole family. Dan mentioned it earlier, I'm in the same boat. Without my wife supporting me and telling me I'm not crazy for doing that I've done for the last 15, 20 years, I wouldn't be here either. And so you're just well done all the way around.
thank you.
So tell everybody where we can get OneBit Adventure and how to get on your Discord and support the community.
Yes, so OneBit Adventure is free to play on Google Play, App Store, and Steam. You can get it now for free. In order to join in on the Discord, it's actually in the game. If you download the game and you look on the right-hand panel after you've logged in, you'll see a Discord button. Once you tap that button, you'll be straight into the official Discord. So yeah, and I'm looking forward to working on Dungeon Agreed. That's going to be the multiplayer OneBit that everyone has been hoping for, but also might be a little sad that OneBit has its days coming. So
hey, you could make a whole new game called The Death of OneBit.
Oh, no.
I mean,
you finally go to the end of the dungeon.
No.
You die.
It's a marketing beat. It's a marketing beat. No. All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jonathan, for coming on here. This has been amazing. Thank you, everyone, for watching and tuning in. As the link scrolls across the bottom, indiegamebusiness.com, you can go there, and there is a newsletter you can sign up for, and you get a list of investors and a list of publishers. Also, we've got merch. There's merch. So check out the merch that you can get there. Also, there is a link to go to it right here. Oh, we have Teachables, free online classes, indiegamebusiness.teachable. And the merch is right here. Streamlabs.com/indiegamebusiness/merch. You can get you an Indie Game Business hat,
Goodie.
just like Jace got right there. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend.